Hello and welcome to the Free Outside Show. I'm Jeff Garmeyer. I just finished Cocodona 250 for the fifth time. And this year, it was the biggest gap between what I thought was happening in a race and what was actually happening. What does that mean? Let's get into it. So I drove down to the race on Friday. I stopped and ran in Zion on Saturday, showed up to meet the crew, go over the plan on Sunday. Things were going fairly good, but in the back of my mind, I was a little sick. I'd bought 10 of the rescue shot things that have like cayenne pepper, oregano oil, and something else in them. And I was downing those like every couple hours thinking that would get rid of the cold that I had. But it wasn't a big deal. Stuff happens. I can get through anything. So I have the crew meeting. This was the best crew and pacers that I've ever had. They just work so well together. I had Jameson, who I coach, and his wife Hannah, and she's a PT, so that's super valuable. I had Jeff Peltier and Audrey, who Jeff was pacing. Audrey basically jumped in and helped crew with everything. Kristen, my aunt, was the head crew chief. This was her fourth year down here doing it. So we were going for year 5. And then I had Ross, who I coach as well, and he was helping with some of the crewing. And I had Ari, who was my last pacer, because headed into this, I had a pacer break his leg, actually. So I had to fill in, and Ari has paced in the past and lives in Mammoth, California. So put out the message, and she drove on out. So we go over the crew plan, all that. Everything seems good. Everyone's all in. Everyone has experience. It was awesome. So wake up the morning of the race. Well, the night before, didn't sleep great, not unexpected, but the night before the night, I slept for 10 hours. That's always the key. So going into the race, didn't have a ton of sleep, but was like, we can get through it. Everyone's nervous. Gun goes off, go, feel fine. Running with maybe Finn Melanson, some people around there, Courtney and Dan Green a little bit. So in the first section, I was running with Courtney and Dan, and we got to this one turn, and they turned the wrong way because they didn't see the flagging, and I yelled at them, "Hey, rookies, it's actually over here." And they laughed because, I'd done Cocodona 4 times, and it was both of their first times doing it. And so we continued on, and then the weather came in. And when I'm talking weather, I mean like real weather. Sheets of rain turned to hail, and then there was snow on top of Lane Mountain. It was incredibly miserable. It was so cold. It was wet. I was soaked through everything. And while other people put on jackets, I just kept my t-shirt on because I didn't feel cold. It was probably the first sign that something might be wrong. But get up to that climb. It was about a 7.5-hour climb. Felt a little too good. And then running down the few miles into Crown King was when it was like, something feels a little off, but I need to just keep going. It's not a big deal. So quick change of stuff, see the crew at Crown King, and then head back out and able to run fairly well before things just started to crumble going into Arrastra Creek. So you follow this highway. It's called the Sentinel Highway. That's pretty flat and it's super runnable. And I was able to run a lot of it, but it was becoming more and more of a struggle. Like the two things that were really prevalent where I was getting this massive headache, and then my lower back started aching, which is strange because at this point I'm not carrying that much water because it's cold and rainy and I don't need that much water. So the back shouldn't hurt because I've done a ton of strength work in the last year. Oh, well, it's Cocodona, so I can push through. So I'll keep going, do quick changeover and stuff in Arrastra Creek. And then next up's Camp Kippa, and it's a pretty good climb. So I'm running as much as I can. And then all of a sudden, just things really start to crumble. My back starts seizing. My head is just pounding. And I start hallucinating witches. This happens over maybe an hour period, but all I can do is walk, and I'm walking really slow, and I have to sit down. And this is when it's like things are not good. I don't know what to do here. I try using my inhaler. Then I call my crew, and I'm like, things are not good. I think I'm way sicker than I thought at the start of this thing. And so they're like, oh, it's, just get through it. It always will get better. There comes in waves. And it was like, yeah, I know it's going to be fine, but just want you guys to know that if this takes me till Saturday when the cutoff is, which would be 3 days longer than I expect, I'm going to still try to finish it. And they're like, okay, good. That's the mindset we want. And so I'm hallucinating. I pick up a big old stick and I'm using it as a walking stick. This is mile 62. It is so strange to be hallucinating because I'd just done a 77-mile, 12-hour race as a tune-up and didn't really feel anything, not even a little leg tiredness, but definitely no hallucinating or just seizing of a back or anything like that. So things are strange. I'm not feeling good. I look at the map and it's like 2 miles to Camp Kippa. And those were the longest 2 miles of my life. I'm walking with this massive walking stick. It's like a wizard's staff. And at this point, my girlfriend passes me and she looks at me and there's like shock in her eyes. I'm like, what are you doing here? Why are you at this point? Why do you have a stick? And she just gave me some words of encouragement and kept going. But whew, man. So I get to Camp Kippa and I immediately tell them I'm pretty sick. I need to sleep. So they put me in a cabin and I go to sleep. It's the earliest I've ever slept in one of these by far. And then, so I text my crew I'm going to sleep. I go to sleep and have them charge my phone while I'm sleeping because I don't want to be able to use an alarm. I just want to give my body as much sleep as it can have. And so I wake up and I think I've slept 5 hours. So this is where I'm going to start throwing in what actually happened versus what I thought was happening in my race. So I text the crew like, oh, I feel so much better. I slept for 5 hours. In reality, apparently, I slept for 2 hours. And when I called them, I had pretty bad brain fog. And Jameson, the pacer who I was talking to, was having actually all the exact same symptoms of back aching, headache, brain fog, cough that I was calling and complaining about. So for him, that was like an oh no moment. So I called them or I texted them and said, feeling good, I'm going to run down. So I ran down pretty well, got into Whiskey Row, did a quick changeover, got to grab Jeff Peltier, the first pacer. We ran pretty good. And this is when it's just like consistency is king. Just one foot in front of the other, try to run most of the runnable sections. Don't worry about it. This is how I always treat Cocodona because in my mind, my floor is one of the highest. Like even in the worst year, I can still sneak into the top 10 and that's always the goal. So even when things go wrong, like they'd already gone wrong, I'd already had to sleep so early. I'd slept in, I knew this at the time and knowing it now too. I'd slept more in the first 12 hours of this race than the winners were going to sleep for the entire thing. So my chances were not looking good to get on the podium, but at least I was going to salvage it and have the best race that I could. Okay, so I'm running with Jeff Peltier. We get through the Grand Adels, goes really good. We get into Iron King, blow through it, into Fane Ranch, do the quick changeover, and then this is when the mud really starts. And it's like thick mud where you can't run on it because it's like 5 pounds on each foot. It's so messy. This was the craziest year of Cocodona ever. We had rain, snow, hail in the first section where people usually have to DNF or quit because of heat stroke. Instead, this year, people were quitting because of hypothermia. So that's how crazy it was. Continued to rain as we ascended and went towards Mingus. I was with Jameson at the time and he had this cough and stuff. And I kept asking him if he was okay. And he'd just be like, yeah, I'm fine. Things are okay. Gonna be all right. Feeling okay. Just a little dry air or something. And I believed it. So we're going, 5 pounds of feet on. I roll my ankle in this section in the mud, shake it off, keep going. And we get up to Mingus. Things are still feeling mid, but it's Cocodona, so you can just push through because things go in waves, and we do a quick change over there. It's going to be a really fast, hopefully, descent into Jerome. This is one of the most technical sections where rocks are literally everywhere, but you can run it if you're smart and your feet feel good, and that was the case for me. And so I start running down with Ari, and we do really well. We pass 3 or 4 people, and in the meantime, this is when my crew is dealing with their own stuff. So Jameson continues to feel worse, the same symptoms that I had, and after he paced, he decided to take a COVID test, and apparently it was positive. So he has COVID, all the same symptoms that I had. So I probably gave him COVID on Sunday, and I'm running with it. And this is, according to my crew, they talked about it and we're like, should we tell Jeff or not? And they came to the conclusion, we don't want it to negatively affect his race. We think he can keep going. And as with the, experienced people on board, they decided that they would just play it by ear. And if I was feeling bad, we could talk about it. But until then, not going to say anything. So they didn't say anything. And the other thing they had to talk about was Jameson still going to be a part of it and able to pace? And after thinking about it, he was like, well, I think if I sleep plenty and switch around a couple sections, that he's still going to be able to be a part of it and pace and crew. So this is when we learned that we were the crew with COVID, and I'm running with COVID and going to try to still get this done, but I don't know that I have it. But the brain fog continues. So we get to Jerome. Things are good there. It's a quick changeover. I like that place because it really signifies kind of the halfway point. You're entering like a downhill and flatter section before you climb up and over and get into Sedona. So change out, and this is where I run with Jeff Peltier again. It's a really tough descent. We passed 3 or 4 more people here, people that are just dead, saying that they went out too hard, which I thought would be the case because it was so much colder this year that it was easy for your legs and muscles to be the limiting factor versus in a normal year, it would be the heat and your body's ability to operate. So we descend down, we cross the river there. Jeff videos a bunch of stuff. It's kind of a cool section. We saved a few people, or this one woman's race a couple different times because she missed flagging and kept going, and we yelled at her to come back, go this other way. So, good Samaritan there. And then caught Kevin Goldberg, who is a 4-time finisher and hosts the Distance to Empty podcast. Caught him going into Dead Horse State Park. That was really cool. We always love his crew, and he's got the same demeanor of sometimes you have a good race, sometimes you have a bad race, but you can always have a fun race. So that's how I think of it, and I think he does too. So we were chatting, had a good time, got into Dead Horse and changed over everything, and then was back out and headed towards Deer Pass. This is a section that you can run really well or you can bleed a bunch of time. And my goal was, let's run it really well. So what we did is Ari, my pacer, put a speaker in, I guess she just had it in her hand, and we just played some energetic music, kept things rolling the entire time, ran almost the entire thing, and got to Deer Pass right as we needed headlamps, because that's good, because we didn't back any, we didn't think about it. So from Deer Pass, this is when I think it's my most difficult section. It just feels so weird and convoluted how you get into Sedona. It feels like you climb up multiple hills the exact same way and just keep doing loops. You see the same like city trail signs for Sedona trails 4 different times, I believe, and that messes with my mind every time, especially if it's at night, and it was going to be at night. So I start with Jameson and we run the first couple miles, get a bit of a buffer. We'd pass somebody else at this aid station, so doing good, we're moving up. And then start faltering, getting really negative, brain fog, really tired, thinking like, oh my gosh, I think I need to sleep. And I'm just falling apart. And it becomes this walking thing. I decided to take poles. This is the only section of the entire race that I took poles on. I only took them because I thought it would help and keep me more in a rhythm. But in reality, it was just one more thing I was messing with. I was poking at them, finding a place to put them down instead of my feet every time. It was slow, methodical, and miserable. And after just a hellacious section, we finally got to the Sedona posse grounds, got in there, did a quick resupply, that's funny, my through hiker background's coming out. I'm still in the brain fog mode. But we did a quick change out. I ate 2 veggie burgers. I just needed some real food. I wanted to try to sleep, so I laid down, but after 2 minutes, I got up and told my crew, like, there's no chance, we're wasting time. So I just did a quick change out and started going with Jeff Peltier. This time we were going to be going up the Hangover Trail. It was going to be brutal, but ready for it. So I had my brightest headlamp on, the best chance to see everything the best possible, and You run down, you run the trails of Sedona, and then you cross over and you start climbing up. This is when we caught Mike McKnight, or we kind of just were together there. He pulled ahead a little bit, and the navigation began once we hit the Hangover Trail. I was super tired, so Jeff called it a nappuccino. So I took a 200 milligram caffeine pill and then took a 5-minute nap. And when I woke up, I felt good enough to get to sunrise. And I started having some symptoms of my sickness, even more prevalent than the brain fog at this point. I was throwing up a little bit, but as Jeff said, he was extremely impressed that I could throw up and continue walking at 3 miles an hour. So that was something to be impressed by. But the Hangover Trail was incredible. So the exposure is insane, and you're just following these white dots on the slick red rock, and you climb way up above Sedona. They're like these big pinnacle rocks. If you just Google Sedona, and you'll see kind of what it looks like. It's really incredible. So we're climbing up there. Navigation's a little tricky, but luckily Jeff is pretty energetic and able to run ahead and look at where his watch says to go. And he's a big gadget guy, so he knew exactly how to use his watch in navigating and getting us to where we actually need to go. So it was a longer section, but we were pretty consistent and able to push pretty good. We got up to the Schnebley Hill Road where there's a water station. Just grabbed a little bit of water, and it was like, okay, now we can run. But then that road was so full of mud that running was pretty impossible. It was like one of those things where it's probably like a 30-foot wide road, and you'd try each little section between the tire tracks to think, maybe this one's a little more solid. Maybe we can push and run a little bit more here. But it turned mostly into a hike. It was just miserable as mud for like 3 miles. When we got to the Foxborough aid station, this is when the first of the pacerless sections begins. It's really strange and hard this year that there are these sections where you don't get to have a pacer. So it was just going to be me, and talk to the volunteers or the people running the aid station was like, what's the mud like coming up? And they said, it's not as bad as it has been. So in my mind, it's like, what tools do I have that can turn this thing around? How can I push this? So what I did is I threw on my Hoka super shoes and I started running. I texted Callie Vincent and Scott Trayer and asked them if they had an electronic dance music playlist that would keep me going. They sent me one, and that's what I did. I put it on way too loud for my ears, and I ran basically every step for that 14, 15-mile section, and I ran it hard. It was awesome, actually. In my head, it was like, I made the goal, I want to catch Max Joliffe, who is like, Jolliffe maybe, who was like 8 miles ahead with 90 miles to go or 80 miles to go. Was like, I can catch him. And so that's where it started. I ran all of it, and randomly in Munns Park, an athlete I coach, Mel, was out there with their friends, and they, with some people that work for Ultraspire and stuff, and they were cheering for me. I was starting to feel that energy. My brain was dead. I was feeling pretty tired. Sleep had felt so messy the whole Cocodona so far, but I felt this deep desire that I could still get the best out of myself, and there was still so much time left, and let's just have fun with it. So that's what I was doing. I got into Munns Park way quicker than I expected or the crew. I took off those carbon-plated shoes because I needed to let my feet rest. I ate most of a pizza because that's what I really wanted to eat at that point. It was a battle to eat as much real food as possible because I wasn't able to eat it out during the sections, but once I got into the aid stations, I could eat endless amounts of food. So ate all that, drank all that, and then began this hard section. It's always feels like you just enter the middle of nowhere when you go from Munns Park to Fort Tuthill. There's one aid station in the middle there, but I decided to continue wearing those super shoes because it was going to be fairly dry. So I was with Ari, and we ran a lot of it, but there were some sections where it looked like a tornado just tore through the forest, where trees and stuff just covered the route. The trail doesn't even really feel like a trail. But then there's other sections where you're on a pretty smooth road and the miles are really flowy and easy to get through. And so those were where I could sink into maybe 5.5 miles an hour and just kind of run and rack those up. My feet felt pretty good. The carbon was certainly tiring them out, but it was all part of the plan, I guess, on if I could bank and get some time, then I could get to Fort Tuthill and start that Walnut Canyon section while it was still daylight. So we got into Kelly Canyon where I just wanted something good to like celebrate getting through that section because it's always been a hard section for me. And so we stood there. I got a coffee and I asked them to put hot chocolate in it so I could have like a fake mocha, and it was so good. So we could have blown through that section because and get to Fort Tot Hill, but my mindset always is when you get through a hard section or something you're dreading, you need to spend a couple more minutes there to let yourself acknowledge and really just give yourself a pat on the back because all these things are really hard, and you when you get through them and accomplish something, you should celebrate the micro ones along the way. So leave Kelly Canyon, and it's a really windy route until you join a road, and then from there it was like run walk strategy. Basically, probably run 60-70%, walk 20-30%. But just by doing that, it broke it up a little bit more. I was pretty tired of running, but I knew it was good for me. So it was like every time that it was flat or downhill running, every time it was uphill hiking, and even some of the uphill, I could put like little micro goals out there, like until that next stump, let's run. So that's how we got to Fort Tut Hill. There were a number of day hikers out there, and they were like, "Oh, are you doing the big one?" And it was like, what gave me away? The smell. So we got to Fort Tut Hill in the late afternoon and joined the crew, and we put on the speaker, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." And that is what the live stream captured as we went into Fort Tut Hill and did a full changeover. This was about to be the second pacerless section, which is really tough. These pacerless sections are hard because you've had the resources and the people to lean on that got you that far, and they disappear. And the Walnut Canyon is a really hard one for a lot of people because it feels like you're in the trees the whole time, and it just is kind of endless. So my goal, I love NBA basketball and the playoffs were going on, is I was going to put on the Denver Nuggets Oklahoma City game live on the radio and listen to that. And I'll tell you, it kept me pretty alert. So I listened to that, started this section, and we just went for it. They also did a wellness check at Fort Todd Hill, and I was just sarcastic. So I got through it pretty well. But it was 2 hour or maybe an hour and a half, and then it started to get dark and it was raining. It was pretty miserable. But then I heard this rustling on the side of the hill in that around the Walnut Canyon area, and there was a bobcat. I took a photo. It was pretty awesome, and I just stood there and we looked at each other, and that really kind of turned things around about like, oh yeah, we are out in nature. There are these really cool things out here to check out. So that bobcat really was one of the highlights of the whole thing, to see it on a pacerless section too, to have like this personal thing that's just me. And I did take a photo, so it wasn't hallucinating. I got pretty tired on that section a little bit later. I took about a 5-minute nap. That felt good enough. And then I just charged on into Walnut Canyon. I was getting so hungry. This is where it was like, I just need to eat all the food possible. The crew brought like, I think pancakes and some like frittata thing, and I ate all of it. And then this is when it was going to be a really cool section after from Walnut Canyon to Wildcat, where Ross Beasel, who I've coached for about a year and a half, and he didn't like running to start was just mostly a struggle, or we had to work. We started from not a lot of experience, and he just ran rim to rim to rim. It's been one of the most fun coaching things I've ever done. And he was going to just come out and crew, but he asked about pacing, and it was like, yeah, jump in this 7 mile section. So he jumped in and paced me, and he was ready to go. And we started out strong, and things started to crumble from there because I was just so tired. It was so cold too. It was probably in the 30s in Flagstaff because it's at 7,000 feet, and this weird weather front had moved in for the race. But we were going along, and it's like, man, I think I need to sleep. And so I tried to sleep, but I got so cold that I woke up within like a minute and was like, uh-oh, we got to get moving. This is really bad. I'm super cold. So we threw on all the clothing possible. I didn't throw on my emergency blanket, but I really should have. And then it was like, all right, you need to walk at 3+ miles an hour and just drag me along, because if you're walking that fast up there, I will feel like I have to catch up. So that's what we did. And this is when I start hallucinating, seeing things. I'm seeing aliens up in the sky. My eyes are glazed over, all this stuff. And it turns out that earlier when I thought I'd slept for 5 hours, it was like maybe an hour and a half maximum. It was 2 hours between when I texted my crew I was going to sleep and that I woke up and was going to start running again. And that's when I thought I'd slept for 5 hours. So they had not told me that. And at this point, the crew has COVID and it's likely that I gave it to them since I have the same symptoms and they haven't told me that either. So I'm battling all these things that are a lot bigger than actually just standard Cocodona, but in my mind, I'm just fighting the same things that I fight every year. So I'm just getting through them, which is kind of a funny thought thinking back. At this point, I have plenty of power in my phone, so I turn it on and I see a text from the John G athlete manager, Kyla, who's doing her first 200. She's in the race and she's saying how bad she's doing. And it was like, whatever, I'll give her a call. So I gave her a call and it was actually really good because it made me think and problem solve for somebody else and see if we could get her back on track. So she was just like, I'm really cold. I'm moving slower than I thought. So it was like, let's go through your bag. Let's take a caffeine pill. Let's drink some water. And I just got to project my mental ability to think in any way onto her situation while I just mindlessly moved forward. So that basically carried me into Wildcat, and it was good to help her problem solve using my 5 years of experience at Cocodona. Then we were good to go. And then Wildcat. Wildcat is the final aid station with crew. So this is the one where prepare yourself, you climb up Eldon, you circle around, and you finish the darn sucker off. So Jameson was going to pace me in this section. The two COVID boys, well, I guess more of us had COVID, but at least the guy who tested positive. But I ate some food. I decided I needed to sleep, so I slept for 12 minutes there. It was good. Max Jolliffe was at the aid station, and I kept going past him, and then it was home free. Lindsay Dwyer, the second place woman, came into the aid station right as I was leaving. And in my mind, it was like, I don't want to let her pass me, but let's not push too hard. It's still like 30 miles or something to the finish of this race. It was actually 257 miles this year instead of 250. And so me and Jameson go. It's 3 miles an hour walk, but it's uphill, so that's a good enough pace. And the route has changed up Eldon. Instead of doing a direct route that's like 2 miles, you do this like 12-mile route where you climb this trail that goes way out to the north, swings back, does all these switchbacks up, and then eventually hits the ridge and follows that up and hits the crest of Eldon. And the whole way, all we did was just relentlessly forward. And after about an hour, when it was light out and stuff, I decided to just put the live stream on and just mindlessly listen to it. So we listened to that. We made jokes. We were both actually fairly negative. I think we were having a hard time, and I didn't know why we were both feeling so rough at the time, but now I do. We were just making jokes and feeling each other's negativity as you do sometimes when you're in the midst of a hard thing. And it was the most mindless climb. Like you think you're getting closer, but the switchback maybe gains 10 feet and then you swing all the way back around and a mile later, you've only gained 50 more feet. And it was crazy. But eventually we gained the crest and we followed that up. There's snow up there, which is pretty amazing. That's how big of a storm came through this year. And get to the top of Eldon. And this is when it's like, okay, Jameson, look back and see if that Lindsay woman is behind. And he's like, yeah, I can't see her. And so it was like, all right, well, I'm going to put the hammer down here. And so we start descending down the most technical trail off Eldon. And man, it was eating up my feet. Every drop is like 2 feet long or 2 feet below the previous one. And you're just like hopping from rock to rock. And you have 250-mile feet. You have basically done 250 miles at this point. Your feet are mangled. And the rocks are not, they're steady, but they're not like flat. Like they're at different angles and stuff. At this point, I'd taped up my foot the ankle that I'd rolled. Hannah, our PT in the crew, had helped tape that up because it was just like, I need a little stability here. I don't trust this ankle. So the ankle held up and I just like floated and parkoured my way down and I descended in like maybe 35, 40 minutes. Come to find out, most of the leaders and the people behind took like an hour and a half. And it was just like, oh, well, I was worried about people catching up to me. So I threw down like my fastest comparative section descending off Eldon. And so get to I think it's called the Fat Boy Loop Trail, wind around, hit the Trinity Aid Station where just blow through it. Don't need anything. It's 5 miles to the end here. And my gas tank is empty. My brain is dead. I have massive brain fog, if you've ever experienced that, where if you try to do anything in your head like math or count down time or anything like that, it's just impossible. And so that's what happened, but there's 5 miles left. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to try to run every time I can think about running. And so that was like 100 feet at a time, but you know what? That gets you there slightly faster than if you walk the whole thing. Get to Buffalo Park. That means there's just a couple miles left there, and see the crew and pacers. They're excited. They're making jokes, but my brain doesn't work. I'm just dead. So I'm like, all right, guys, if we walk to maybe it's like the intersection up there, then I'll turn it on and run the rest of the way. And the whole way I'm like, please be a red light so I get more time to rest. And it was, luckily. So get there, red light, and then it finally turns to green and start going down run down Beaver Street all the way to Birch, pushing it as fast as I can, but just don't have anything this year. Turn left on Birch and then have to go down the backup alley because they're doing a prisoner exchange, which is a crazy thing because I guess they have a van that they put prisoners in and take places from that Heritage Square place where the race is. But turn down there, go under the finish line, and there's a bunch of people there. Only one other time have I finished during the day, and the energy was electric. I fist pumped. I never show emotion, but I was so excited to have finished for the 5th time. I got a plaque that said 5-year finisher, handshook with Steve, took a bunch of photos. It was pretty crazy to wrap that thing up and eat some food, sit there in the hot sun. I was sunburned because we got out of Wildcat so quick that we forgot to put a hat on me and sunscreen. So I was fairly sunburned, but finished, I think, 10th place or something. And this is when 30 minutes later, the crew was like, okay, Jeff, we have some things that we have to tell you. And it was like, well, okay, what do you mean? They're like, well, first, you didn't sleep 5 hours the first night. There's actually no way. It was probably about 90 minutes to 2 hours maximum. They say, second thing is Jameson tested positive for COVID with the same symptoms as you on Tuesday. And we didn't tell you. And they're like, you're not mad, right? And it was like, no, I think it was better to not tell me. And then there was a third thing, but I can't exactly remember what that is at the moment. So it was the race that was super strange and just went very uniquely. I still feel really good about it. I had a really fun time. It was an awesome crew. Everyone was supportive. We faced a lot of issues out there, but man, let's say running a 250 on COVID, not recommended. All right, this show is brought to you by John G, JANJI.com. I wore their Sun Chaser hoodie, their visor, their shorts all throughout. A few issues I had out there. I did have some penis chafing, which was pretty awful, but Ari, who ran track in college, said that all her friends swore by Vagisil, so I actually used Vagisil to lube up my nuts and penis. So the things that you hear on this podcast, it got me through, but it was pretty rough when I showered yesterday for the first time. Other issues, swollen ankle, that's to be expected when you roll it out there. But other than that, legs feel really good. Back is still achy. And I think I am over COVID. It's been 7 days since I started showing symptoms. And I don't know that tests work so well anymore. But if they do, I tested negative finally today. So hopefully negative on COVID. That is the Cocodona 250. This is the year anniversary of my podcast. So if you can give it 5-star rating wherever you listen and share it with anyone, that'd be awesome. That's all I got. Stay elite, my friends.